Hey, can we confirm that we've got good voiceover commentary coming out on the live stream? Hey, can we confirm that we've got good voiceover commentary? All right, hey, what's up, everybody? Good morning. This is Agasicles Stamus from GearWorks.com and the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube, here with another episode of the Streamer's Cookbook, episode number 4. So this morning, for whatever reason, maybe just because I just like kind of rotating around to all the services, I decided I would try and make an attempt to live stream this to Twitter. So looks like things are going okay. So let's go ahead and get started. So the Streamer's Cookbook is my series where I talk about all of the hardware, software, and services that you can utilize for doing your live streams for video games, predominantly. And every once in a while, I walk through a given hardware setup that I've hooked up so that people can listen in and use this as an example for how they want to live stream. Now, my primary shtick and paradigm is that I use a dedicated streaming PC to do my live streams because I like the additional control and the higher quality that you're typically able to get out of a stream. When you use something like your native onboard PlayStation 4's capability to live stream or your Xbox 360, you're typically going to be limited in resolution and bandwidth, and you're not going to have as much control, and you have to use weird third-party services. So now, that all being said, unfortunately, for some reason in OBS this morning, I'm having a problem with the Logitech C920 webcam that I'm using, which is the on-equipment webcam that you see in the main picture. For some reason, I'm not liking the resolution that I see on it, and I struggled a little bit with OBS to try and get it configured correctly, and something funky is going on with it. The C930 webcam that I'm using as the on-me webcam seems to be doing fine, so I don't know exactly what the problem is, but I needed to get this done, and I ran out of time to try and improve the video quality, and I didn't want to swap cameras. So let's go ahead and quickly talk through the equipment that we're going to be talking about in today's episode, and then I will actually walk over and walk you through the hookup. So I've got 2 devices that are going to be going into the test chamber here in the Geek Command Center that are part of this setup. So the first one is the AverMedia Live Gamer Xtreme 2, which you can see. Again, I'll walk over to the setup here in a second. But it's the device labeled LGX there near the middle of your screen. So it is a USB 3.0/3.1 video game capture card. The really nice thing about that device is that it is capable of doing 4K pass-through. So I've spent the last few months to a year converting most of the lab over to 4K. But the problem was before the LGX2, as well as the AverMedia Live Gamer Portable 2 Plus, which is another game capture card that I have from the same company, and the Live Gamer Ultra, which is also made by AverMedia, which actually captures at 4K. Those 3 capture cards are capable of doing 4K pass-through. Again, the GC553 actually records. But up until then, what you always had to do is you had to go and dumb your video feed down to 1080p in order to play your game because the capture cards were incompatible with 4K. So that has been changed, and that's a good thing. So I got a hold of this device. It's the GC551. I'm going to be putting it under test here over the next few weeks and seeing how it does. We've already tested the Live Gamer Portable Plus 2, as well as done some initial testing with the Live Gamer Ultra GC553, which actually captures at 4K. You can see example videos of those over on Rounding Off Infinity on YouTube as well. The one thing that I don't like about the LGX2 is I also have the first LGX, the Live Gamer Xtreme GC550, and with that one, you had front panel inputs, 3.5mm jacks, with 1 output, 1 input, so you could plug your headphones directly into the game capture card and capture the video and capture the audio feed, the in-game audio, and put those into your headphones so you could hear the game. And it also had 3.5mm line-in input, so you couldn't use that for microphone, but you could use that for like an iPod, or sometimes I would plug in my phone and stream like DRM free, not DRM free, but Creative Commons music from YouTube to add a music track to my background. Those have been removed in the LG X2, and I feel like that's a loss of a capability. When you don't have a 3.5mm headphone output in a video game capture card, it kind of makes getting the in-game audio into your headphones a bit of a pain. You can virtualize a channel in Windows 10 now, and that works. It took me it was a little difficult to figure it out the first time around, but I also what I really dislike is trying to return the PC to its normal audio configuration. Can sometimes be a little janky. So it's much easier if your video game capture card just has a 3.5mm jack right in the front, and you can plug in and get the in-game audio that way. For a webcam, the other piece of hardware that I'm gonna have under test is, and I should mention, the LG X2 is capable of doing 4K pass-through at 60 frames per second. So you're able to record at 1080p 60 frames per second, so you can have a higher quality capture or live stream. The other piece of equipment that I'll have under test in this rig is the Zoom Q8 handy video recorder. Now this camera and a couple other ones that I plan on obtaining here shortly came out, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. They capture at to me a weird 2304 by 1296p, which is basically a 3 megapixel feed. So it's higher quality than a 1920 by 1080p, slightly higher resolution. What's really unique or special about this camera and the other ones in its family are these cameras are specifically made for musicians. They have these high-quality microphone module inputs, and I'm going to be using for the live stream that I'm going to do to test these two pieces of equipment. I'm going to be trying to use those microphones and see how well they work. And when I walk over to the rig, I'll take the windscreen off of the camera module so you can get a look at that. As you can see, I have it set up on a mini tripod. Now, the really interesting thing is, I guess I have a third piece of equipment under test as well. In the middle there, the black and red module, it's red on either end. And again, I'll walk over there and show it to you. You've probably seen it before. This is the Mirrorbox HSV 321, which is a $100 video game capture card. I've mentioned in the videos where I've talked about that card that the other trick that it does and the other capability that it has is that it can also take any HDMI input and make it show up as a webcam to the streaming PC. So I can use the Zoom Q8 handy video recorder, which has an HDMI output, route it through the Mirrorbox, and send it over to the PC to use as my webcam. Now, there's only one other commercially available consumer-grade piece of equipment that does that. I might not even call it consumer grade, it's probably more prosumer, is the Blackmagic Design Web Presenter, which is a $500 piece of equipment. The Mirrorbox HSV 321 is about $100. So it's a much less expensive option. Finally, the last thing that I have in the hookup, and I'm not showing the headphones in the camera feed, but I'm gonna, since I need to virtualize the sound with this setup, I'm gonna be sending the primary audio into a pair, sending it through the mixer that you see over there on the left-hand side, the Behringer Xenix 302 USB hardware mixer. So I'm coming out of my 3.5mm audio output from the gaming PC. You can see that there's a splitter that splits that out into RCA left and right jacks, and then sending that over to a pair of Razer Man of War Tournament Edition Destiny 2 headphones. And then what I'll do is I'll break out a virtualized sound channel using Windows to the Live Gamer Xtreme, and that's what will send the audio over to the streaming PC. So let's go ahead and walk over to the equipment and switch scenes, and I will talk you through the hookups one more time. All right. So bear with me a bit. It's always a little more difficult when I'm doing these things live. I've got to switch the monitor around too so I can see what I'm talking about over here. Hopefully nothing goes crashing to the floor. Okay, so to make things a little more tangible, so this is the AverMedia Live Gamer Xtreme 2. Again, USB 3.0/3.1, 4K 60p pass-through, capable of recording at 1080p, but passing through 4K. So you can see your games in all their 4K glory, and then record in 1080p. So the hookup for this is very simple. We will do the best I can because I already have it hooked up. On the back panel, you have connections for HDMI in, HDMI out. So you simply take the output out of your video card. The gaming PC that I have this connected to runs a NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1060. So it comes in here, it goes out to the display here, and then the connection for the power connection and data connection for the LG X2 is USB-C over to the USB 3.0 port on the dedicated streaming PC. And when everything's hooked up and it's working well, I don't know if you can tell the color on that light, but you get a little blue light indicator. So I run this over to my streaming PC, which, so to run this, you need a minimum of, I think, 4th generation Intel Core i5 processor. I'm running over to, and I can't remember the minimum RAM that you have to have, but I'm running this over to a streaming PC that's kitted out with an Intel Core i7 7700K and 32 gigabytes of RAM. So I think it needs a minimum 8K of RAM for you to run the GC551. Yeah, it's actually a minimum 4K of RAM and 8 gigabytes of RAM recommended. So again, that's what you're going to utilize to get your in-game video out onto your live stream. This is the Zoom Q8 Handycam. So let's go ahead and take the windscreen off. And again, this is this condenser microphone array that it's got sitting up top. And what it does is it has the microphones set up at almost a 90-degree angle to each other, so you get cross-stream audio. You then have individual channel controls here to control the audio levels and select those audio channels. So you have a left and right audio channel connector here. Now on the back, you also have XLR inputs. So if you wanted to hook up an even higher quality microphone, you could. You have a headphone connection jack, USB connection jack for data, and then an HDMI output, which uses, I think this is micro HDMI. I sometimes get confused with whether or not, I think HDMI switches the paradigm that that USB typically uses, so I think at one point, I think the connector that's similar to this for USB, which is micro, I think is mini for HDMI. But I'm not positive on that, so don't quote me on it. So it uses the smaller HDMI type of connector, which might be mini. And so I have a adapter cable that takes a mini or micro HDMI output and then sends it to a full-size HDMI input. That input is going over here to the mirror box, HSV 321, which has appeared before on the Streamer's Cookbook. And it comes in the back here. Power is then supplied, and I really like the power connector on the HSV 321 because it's just a straight up USB-A connector. And so that is also going over to a USB 3.0 connection on the back of my streaming PC. No need for video output because I don't need to see the video replicated anywhere. I'm just going to send it over on the data signal and then put it in the camera port in OBS. Final piece of the mix is to get the in-game audio into a pair of headphones and out of the wind, since I'm going to be using open-air microphones here. And when you're using a headset and you're talking into a boom microphone, you don't so much have a need to get the in-game audio out of the wind, but you do when you're using open-air mics. So I'm going to be piping the sound to the Behringer Xenix 302 USB hardware mixer. Because I am taking the feed from the audio port, so this is the power connector. It's either power or data. It's a USB connector. Now I'm running it to a power supply at the end. This does connect into PCs over USB, but I'm not doing that because I don't want the audio going to USB. You can virtualize sound channels natively in Windows 10, but I think when you do it, I think you have to send it out over the native sound card. So I don't think you can split it to an external sound card and then virtualize it out to HDMI. I don't think. I've had problems trying to do that before. So I'm just plugged in to the Realtek onboard sound card, 3.5mm audio output. That's coming here via this splitter cable that takes the 3.5mm output, sends it to left and right RCA jack outputs, and then I have the dip switches set on the stereo mixer to then send it over to the headphone port. And what I have plugged in there, as I mentioned, is my Razer Man of War Tournament Edition Destiny 2 headphones. It's a headset, but I'm not using the microphone on it. So that's it for this setup. I'm going to try and play probably a little Left 4 Dead. What I really have in my playlist is to play some Rainbow Six, but I don't want to get involved in trying to get into multiplayer and also try and deal with all this equipment under test. So I'm going to try and get this configured and set up in OBS. If I have any problems, I will mention it in the demo video. So on Rounding Off Infinity, be on the lookout for the next episode of the Firearms Tales, which will probably feature Left 4 Dead. And I will once again talk through this equipment and how the configuration in OBS went and any problems that I ran into. So thanks again for joining in on this episode of the Streamer's Cookbook. Hopefully this went well out onto Twitter, and then I'm going to try and pull it down and also put a copy up over on my YouTube channel, which might be where you're watching it now. And if you're watching it on YouTube, please feel free to like and subscribe. Thanks so much for joining in. If you do have questions and you're watching this on Twitter, feel free to ask those questions by just sending me the replies in the Twitter feed. So thanks again. That's going to do it for me. My name has been Agassiz Stamus from GearWorks.com, the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube, and the Rounding Off Infinity Gaming channel on YouTube. That's going to do it for me. I'm out of here.